goodness, it's later than I thought. Mud or clay or plaster mixed with mortar and of course, water. Daubrey.
Splendid. Well, it's a state of being bewildered. It's a monastic snack, and it's daubing in the sense of building, you know, as they do walls here and there. Sheila.
Well, now, if Madeline's definition is right, I'm in a state of Daubrey, aren't I? Because I really wouldn't like to know which one to choose. As for the television commercial from Paddy about the monk having a quick snack from underneath his gown, that's too far-fetched to believe, but stranger things have happened.
They have on this
Yes, on this programme. And then we have Peter with this thing about plaster on walls. He's got a nice little smile on his face. Because he hasn't been smiling all evening. I'm hurrying, sorry. All right, I'll go for Peter then.
You'll go for him?
Well,
well, you may when you find out. Who knows? Peter, was that true or Duff? Bullseye. Well, really nothing could be more pleasant as we as the game draws peacefully to a close. It certainly, Daubrey is daubing in the sense of wattling and all that kind of thing, building things, and the score standing at 3-all. Oh, friends, how pleasant. Yes? Stir up a few more corpses in the Oxford English Dictionary next week, I shouldn't wonder. Meanwhile, farewell from Charles Osborne. Good night. Peter Sallis. Sheila Tracy. Madeline Smith. Frank Muir. Patrick Campbell. And goodbye. Good evening. We have a little swift dealing from the bottom of the pack. Yes, Patrick Campbell.
And once again, I have by my side, but she hasn't left my side since I saw her last Saturday. Or whenever it was. The actress Miss Madeline Smith. And my other helper has played every part known to man apart from that of Cleopatra, Mr. Peter Sallis.
You may think it's the dawn coming up over Penge, but it isn't. It's the bow tie of Frank Muir.
Evening all. Those of you who listen to Radio 4 and listen to the news being read by Radio 4's first woman news reader may wonder what she looks like. Well, this is what she looks like, because here is Sheila Tracy. Playing hooky from the Arts Council is a musicologist and poet and lots of other things, Charles Osborne.
Let's ring the bell. Yes, good enough. We get this first word, cacolet, I don't know. But anyway, Patrick Campbell and his team will define cacolet, cacolet, or whatever way they pronounce it, 3 different ways. 2 will be false definitions, 1 will be true, which is the one that Frank Muir and his company will be seeking out. So, Patrick, what about this word?
A cacolet is a bat which is native to the huge jungles of the Mato Grosso in Brazil. There are millions of them there. Unlike most bats, they prefer not to get tangled in ladies' hair. In fact, if they see ladies with hair on, they fly like mad away from them because they prefer sinking their long, Dracula-like teeth into the next things like little field mice and little furry animals of that kind. That's what a cacolet is, a bat.
Right, and now, Peter Sallis, it's your turn.
Yes, well, a cacolet is a yellowish, elastic substance. Now, it's insoluble in alcohol, Frank, but it is soluble in ether, and it is exuded from the brain, this yellowish substance. It's better known to the medical profession as ICF, that is intercellular cephalic fluid. And its only purpose, as far as one can gather, is simply to act as a sort of a shock absorber between the brain and the skull.
Yes, just as long as it isn't a disease of sheep. Madeline, your go.
Well, I call it cacolet, and it was first used in the Crimean War, and is in fact a horse-borne, not horse-drawn, ambulance. It is in fact, or was, like 2 armchairs, that is, on either side of the horse's back, with a sort of strap in between to keep the 2 together, and was used for the wounded. So probably Florence Nightingale would have known all about them.
Yes, unhappily not still with us.
Yeah.
However, it's sort of yuck or juice from the brain. It's a kind of bat polite enough not to fly into ladies' hair, and it's a sort of horse-drawn ambulance. Frank Muir.
Yes?
There's a little bit of altercation here.
I'd imagine.
I have no problems myself. I just don't know which it is. Jungle bat, leading with a straight bat, good opening to the innings. I couldn't bear this. I didn't think CACO would be cacolet for this brain bag of fluid rolling around the brain. So is it the horse-drawn ambulance, one worries?
Horse-born?
Horse-drawn. Born.
Born, yes.
Born. I didn't think they had ambulances in there.
Ambulance born of horses. Is that
I'm going to go for the
there?
jungle bat.
Born, you see. She's telling us it is a horse born and not
I've
a horse drawn.
chosen.
You've chosen it?
No, I haven't. I've
you
chosen
haven't,
the
yeah.
bat.
Oh, the bat. The
You
bat.
weren't listening to Sir.
No,
It was,
terribly sorry.
it was Patrick Campbell, wasn't it? Yes, who said all that stuff about the polite bat. True or bluff?
All the rubbish about the...
Filthy liar.
I wonder what cacolet, cacolet, chacolet, I don't know, will turn out to be. Who gave the true definition? Let us see. Ho, ho.
Something here from Florence
I
Nightingale.
So, cacolet, or however you pronounce it, is an ambulance. Did you say horse-drawn or
No, horse-borne. On the horse's back, obviously.
Great.
Born
One of
of a horse.
One of the great ambulances, yes. Now, we have Galalith, I suppose. Frank Muir?
Gal-a-lith. Not really very pleasant. You're not going to enjoy this very much. No, we didn't enjoy the other one. But this Galalith is found, if indeed it is found at all, if you give a whale a post-mortem. Because it's kind of a nasty little ball of sort of crushed up fish bones, which the whale hasn't been able to digest, and it sits in its tummy. It's quite useful stuff, as a matter of fact. Galalith, fairly unpleasant, but there you are. One's got to face life.
Well, whales have, I suppose, if that's the way it is for them, but Tilly Valley. Charles Osborne.
Yes, Galalith is an artificial substitute for ivory that was invented in the early 1900s. You know, I'm very strong on dates, as Paddy will remember. The early 1900s, would you make a note of that? It's a kind of bogus celluloid made basically from the curds in cow's milk, from which cheap handles for walking sticks and umbrellas were manufactured. And also, of course, piano keys and billiard balls, you know, things of that kind.
Yes. Right. Sheila, Tracy, your go.
A Galalith is he who takes up residence on top of a stone pillar, not from choice. It's a punishment that was decreed by the Coptic Church in Greece centuries ago for anybody who stole anything or committed adultery. They put them up on top of the pillar and then they couldn't go on doing it.
They could, I suppose.
Well, it's sitting on a pillar. It's a fishbone ball in a whale, and it's mock celluloid out of which all sorts of things like handles and so forth are made. Patrick, I think it's your turn.
We're so tangled up with inside. We've got whale's hairball. We've got curds in cow's milk.
It's not a pleasant programme.
Not a pleasant program. People up in the... It certainly isn't a kind of imitation celluloid made for walking stick handle, to walking stick handles, because I know it's not to be true. Early 1900s, nonsense, and people sitting on the top of them. How do they get them up there in the first place? The crane. It has to be Frank Muir's revolting whale's hairball.
Well, that's what he said, yes. It was a bundle of bones sitting in a whale's tum-tum. True or bluff, Frank? What an actor it is.
It's a bluff, we all know it.
Isn't that? Galalith doesn't mean some kind of whalebone, hair ball or whatever. What does it really mean? Who gave the true definition?
Oh, no.
Yes, it is. It is the mock substance which, out of which handles and all manner of things were made. 1-1. Interesting score. If that's your idea of a good time. Here we have Marcassin and Peter Sallis to begin.
Well, a Marcassin... Are we all... Yeah, okay. Is a young boar, as portrayed in heraldry. I mean, of course, a B-O-A-R and not a B-O-R-E. And the way that you tell the difference, if you're versed in heraldic circles, between a young boar and an old boar...
Don't go on.
...is...
Stop,
No, I'm forced to go on, because otherwise you won't get the answer. Not that I want you to get the answer anyway. Well, the difference between a young boar and an old boar is that an old boar has a twisted tail. And would you believe it, a young boar has a tail which is as straight as a poker.
So who is going to stand up? Who stands up? No, not a one. Certainly not Madeline Smith.
You want to know? A Marcassin is an extremely, apparently boring-tasting oyster-type chap, found in, and I keep forgetting the name, but I think it's Amnoosuc River in British Columbia. But it has got a little saving grace, because in fact the inside of its shell has a beautiful blue-green patina.
Oh,
So God was quite kind there.
Oh, that's nice.
No pearl.
On the verge of touching. Patrick.
The French word, of course, macassin. It comes to the vineyards. You have a couple of 100,000 miles of Beaujolais, potential Beaujolais. And from the suckers of each vine plant can grow a macassin. It's kind of sucker. Unless you cut off your suckers, you're not going to get any wine that will work on a thin crop, you understand. But you want to lop off your macassin, otherwise, rien.
Well, it's a young boar. The names spring to mind immediately, but he didn't really mean that. He meant B-O-A-R. It's a sucker, I think, running from a vine. And it's a sort of oyster thereabouts from Canada, Charles Osborne.
Macassin, jamais de ma vie.
Ah oui, vous parlez français?
Oui, un petit peu, monsieur. Madeline's horrible oyster, I mean, if that's what it was, I really just can't bear to contemplate. And I think because I don't like to look a gift boar in the mouth, I think it's Peter Sallis's heraldic young boar with the straight tail.
The straight-tailed boar of Peter Sallis, true or bluff? Here he comes. He'll tell you.
Check,
You
find
must.
out which
You
it
have
is.
to.
Oh, yes.
I think we've got it about you there somewhere.
They are lad.
So a moccasin is without question a young boar, in heraldry and so forth. Now, here we have a ferrup, and it's Charles, your go.
Oh, well, ferrup is an exclamatory word like gosh, blimey, and heavens to Betsy.
These are exclamations, are they?
Well, you like a little Australian colour in this, right? Or struth. You see, it's a word of that kind. It's sometimes used in the same way as deuce in an exclamation, such as, what the ferrup is that chap doing on this programme? And it's sometimes used in the plural as Dickens, not the novelist, but, where the ferrups did I put my car keys and this kind of thing, you see. Exclamation.
What they say in Australia, is it?
Yes.
No. Yeah, all the time. Sheila, your go.
A ferrup is a tiny lump of lodestone, which is magnetic oxide of iron, I think I'm right in saying. Now, it can be used in jewellery, in bracelets or a ring, and if a boy gives to his girlfriend a ferrup, then it means something very deep.
Very nice, too. Frank Muir?
It's a little bit boring, this one. I mean,
Feel free, it always is.
I know, but the first one was disgusting, and this one's boring because it's a technical thing. It's a vice used for chaps when they made combs, and they used to clamp the bit of whalebone or tortoiseshell into this vice, and then they could saw the teeth down. They actually saw away and leave the teeth. The point about it was that it was metallic, because if you made it of wood and tightened, you cut through the wood when you got to the bottom of the saw cut. Very boring. I'm so sorry to have taken up your time. I'd like to apologise on behalf of the team and myself for being so boring.
Well, it's a comb maker's vice. I didn't know they had them. Nice men. It's an exclamation, shout of alarm, or as in what the Dickens, and it's a lodestone. Peter.
Yes, I must admit, ferrup. I am ferrup. He is ferrup. No, I must say I don't fancy ferrup. Lodestone, liked it a lot when it was going along, if you understand me. Then, no. Boring, yes. I think we were bored by that, all right. But I think we think. What do I mean? I think he thinks.
Some of them don't blame me.
Listen to your captain.
We're a bit inclined to go for boring vice, clamping thing.
The comb maker.
The Franks, yes.
The instrument with which a comb maker is allegedly supposed to chop little holes and leave the teeth. Frank, true or bluff?
This has to be
Not only boring, but alive.
No vice. Not even a comb maker's. But who gave the true definition of that interesting word? Oh, well. It's an exclamation, but I don't believe it. It is absolutely true, but you just can't imagine that word issuing from anyone's mouth in that form. 3-1, we have, well, I suppose I'd say, chavilones, scavilones. Madeline.
Well, I'm afraid I've got a revolting word now.
Oh, man.
Yes. But it seems that whenever I'm in one of my castles or country houses, if I'm feeling particularly kindly, I will throw these scavilones to the humbler servants. They are, in fact, my droppings, if you like. In a manner of speaking, when I finished my chicken or my meat pasty or whatever, I simply chucked them over my shoulder. So, in fact, scavalones are pieces of gristle or old fish heads. Sorry.
Funny droppings.
How do you get any labour when you feed them like that? Can't think. Patrick Campbell.
Scaviones were the medieval equivalent of long johns, long drawers for gentlemen. Round by the time of Queen Elizabeth, if you had a good leg, the kind of white stockings all round it and on the foot as well, in order to avoid soiling the stockings, because there was a shortage of bars in that time, you had your long johns on underneath your hose, or scaviones. It had to be made to measure, like all the legs being different, you see. a kind of long underwear for gentlemen.
And now it is Peter Sallis' turn.
Yes, scavalones is a word, a somewhat basic word, culled from the language of falconry. That is the keeping of falcons, kestrels, and other predatory birds. I'm afraid that we are back, as you might say, to the droppings, because, choosing my words as carefully as my friend did down the road, I define scavalones as those, or that, which is dropped from a falcon when it has, the bird, that is, has been perched on the thing too long. Scavalone. Well, what did I say?
It's leftovers, it's droppings, it's draws. Sheila.
Could one sum that up as a higher purchase deposit?
Come on.
Now, hang on a minute, Bob. Let's have a quick confab.
Yes.
As long as it's moderately
Get the
quick.
cards out or something over there.
No, I don't know.
Anytime you're ready.
We've had the
No
confab,
problem.
and we don't know,
Yes,
so there's
no
no
problem.
problem. No, it's... I can't think they would have given that to Madeline if it had been true. Oh, I don't know, though. See, they might have given it to her because it had been true, because it was so horrible. I'll come back to that in a minute. The comms, yes, the comms. I don't know what to say about those. I've got to be quick. Peter...
No, not as quick as all that.
Back to falconry, and again, droppings. You see, I think the droppings are a bit obvious. Well, I mean, it's got a ring about it, that sound, hasn't it? No, I'm going to go...
Go for Paddy's
Go for
underwear.
Paddy. Yes,
Yes,
I go for
Paddy's
Paddy's
underwear.
underwear.
The
sudden inspiration.
We're
Well,
all
then
going
now
for
you did
Paddy.
say, said it was long things. True or bluff, my dear?
I'm shocked and horrified. I better got the wrong one.
You've got it there.
It happens by sheer chance to be true.
Scavilones are, underwear, like you said. So we have futon, the score standing at 4-1, as Frank would say, nothing much in it so far. Futon, Sheila.
Walk down any Japanese residential street any day of the week and you will see futon by the thousand. Brightly coloured, hanging out of the windows, being aired because they are a Japanese quilt, usually made of very brightly coloured silks and filled with swan's down.
Sounds rather nice, Frank. Yeah.
A futon is an artist's preliminary sketch. It's the first thing, usually, he commits to the canvas. It's a very sort of wispy outline thing which delineates the shape and content of the picture without actually sort of being much use, because he paints it over afterwards. It comes from dessin au futon, which is again a rough sketch done with charcoal. All I've got to say.
Yes.
I won't bore you this time.
You floored them there. Yes. Quite off their territory. Charles Osborne.
Well, if you were living in the Cameroons and you were trying to build a hut, you would, in fact, need futon to help you build your hut. It's a kind of mortar which is used in the making of huts. The ingredients, I think, in it include the earth of the anthill, cow dung. This is a very basic program, this, and bullock's blood.
And what?
Bullock's blood. The blood of the bullock.
So it's a Japanese quilt, a pencil sketch, a kind of modello or mortar, is what it is. Madeline Smith.
Well, without any conflab. No, without any conflab. I think not.
What's conflab?
That is what we were going to have, but
I
we
see.
didn't.
You have to shed it.
Yes.
You've done it.
I don't think it's a Japanese quilt. It's a little too obvious. Futon and all that. No. Artist preliminary sketch. I'll sketch over that for a second.
If you're quick, we'll get
If
another
I'm ever
word
so
in.
quick. And it could be the mortar and the cow dung and all that. Couldn't it? Very easily. I think it's that. I think it's the last one.
Charles, you said it. All
It's
that
another
stuff about
bluff, isn't it?
mortar. It's a bluff. No. Well, now we need to know, it wasn't that, we need to know, out of the other two, who gave the true definition. Must be one of you, I suppose.
Not that radio operator.
Japanese quilt. You mean you thought that was what it was? You're saying? No. Oh, no, not a word. I just wondered. Well, it does look as though we... I don't think we have time for another one. No, we haven't. There's a man holding up one finger, which is a polite way of telling you that, the game is drawing to a close. So, well, I have to say, the score standing at 5-1. My goodness me. Frank Muir's team has won. So there, we shall have more Esperanto next week, I don't doubt. Until then, goodbye from Peter Sallis, Charles Osborne, Madeline Smith, Sheila Tracy, Patrick Campbell, Frank Muir, and goodbye. This is Call My Bluff, and we've picked up sides, and we've decided who's it. Frank Muir.
Good evening. Both of my guests act, and neither of them have done anything remotely like this programme before in their lives. Now, my first guest has been having trouble with the brothers. Nothing political, not the unions, but she's been appearing in the series called The Brothers, and it's Hilary Tindall. My second guest seems to be making a kind of speciality of tortured geniuses, and he's not tortured. He's a really very good actor. I've seen him as playing Jude, the Obscure, and Shelley, and, of course, the leading part in Ken Russell's Marla, Robert Powell.
And the man who, as ever, is a standing monument to the virtues of soda water, Patrick Campbell.
Good evening. And my first guest is an actress whose unfading beauty keeps popping up in the most unlikely places, year after year. She's just popped up in, of all places, Vienna, playing in Canada in the English language. Who could it be but Dawn Addams?
Good evening, everybody.
And my other guest is, thank heavens, about another lord just for once. And tells me his real work is looking after 9 grandchildren.
Right.
Because he does other things as well. He's a kind of captain of industry, but a field marshal of industry. Lord Kearton.
Those pleasant preliminaries over, we proceed to the matter of the evening, and we have the first word, which appears, because I ring that bell, tollpatchery. Now, Frank Muir and his team will define this word tollpatchery or tollpatchery 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are false. 1 is true. That's the one that Patrick Campbell's going to try and spot down. So what about this word, Frank?
Tollpatchery was a game played by Tudor children. It was also called Laugh and Lay Down. And Professor Opie, who knows what he is talking about with children's games, not to be lightly dismissed. Professor Opie reckons that this has come down through the centuries and was the origination of a game that some of us may have played when children, entitled Grandmother's Steps.
Yes. Jolly good game it is too, Frank. Play it myself often. Robert Powell, your go.
Tollpatchery is a word used by more erudite historians to describe foot soldiers or infantry en masse. Now, I think it was Carlyle, and I'm sure if I'm wrong that Patrick will put me right, who wrote...
Have no fear, I will.
...about Frederick the Great, and remarked that this was over some military stratagem, that the matter was not one of tollpatchery alone.
Or S9E3.
Shall we proceed?
You've had your turn.
Shall we proceed? Hilary, Tindall.
Tollpatchery is a word that describes a pretty ghastly sort of architecture. It's a Victorian architecture. And it takes its name from, rather irreverently, from the surname of an architect called Mr. Lawson Tollpatch. And Mr. Lawson Tollpatch's idea of fine design was a sort of mishmash of mock pseudo and Gothic arches, and it was simply dreadful. Tollpatchery, architecture.
Oh, sounds rather good. But anyway, so you claim it's nasty architecture. Architecture anyway, infantry it is, and also it's a kind of old-fashioned game. Patrick?
Well, I think the Tudor times were a little bit early for children who were to play a game called Laugh and Lie Down. That's much more contemporary in the way of infantile sport. And all that nonsense about military strategy, you see. I've got a little partiality for this Victorian architecture. I believe that there was a man called Lawson Tollpatch, and he'd done it awful. That's what I think it is.
You're backing that fancy,
I'm backing that very, very fiercely.
Right. Then it was Hilary Tindall. Yeah. Was that true or bluff when you said it?
I'm afraid it's a bluff.
She's well pleased, you can tell.
Yes.
A very convincing name, Lawson Tollpatch. Yes, indeed, but it's perfectly untrue. So who gave the true definition of the word tollpatch? Here we go.
Oh, no.
Got it there somewhere. Voila. It is a kind of, it was a kind of name for the infantry, the foot soldiers. Here we have another word, lantern, and it's Patrick's go.
Lantern is a kind of elevated word, a scholar's word, for a kind of lapse of the memory, or a lapse of the tongue, that kind of lapse, really. So when you say, oh, Lord, I've completely forgotten, if you're talking to a scholar, I'm sorry he's called a scholar, I said it twice in a hurry there, you would say in place of, oh, heavens, I've completely forgotten, you would say, alas, I have become a victim of a lantern.
Now it's Frank Kearton's go.
Well, a lantum is a provided background, really, for a Victorian street scene, along with the clip-clop of the horses' hooves and the raucous cries, which Frank will know very well, of drunks tottering out of gin houses. It's a portable hurdy-gurdy, which is slung around the neck, and organ-like music is provided by turning a handle, and a monkey perched on it, that's on the hurdy-gurdy, not the handle, is a sort of optional extra.
You've nearly completed there the scenario of a British film, sir. Very well done. Dawn Addams.
A lantum is a mask-like rigidity of the face. It's a symptom of certain Asiatic fevers, such as Tanapuli fever, Blackwater fever, which you know well, and Horstman's syndrome. It can easily be mistaken for rigor mortis, but it does... it does pass off when a certain stage of the fever is reached. The only time I've ever suffered from it is when you meet somebody and your face goes into mask-like rigidity because you can't remember their name.
So it's a hurdy-gurdy, it's a slip or lapse of the tongue, and it's a facial rictus. Frank?
No, absolutely no problem here. It's merely a question of which is the right definition. Mask-like rigidity of feature. I wouldn't have thought foreigners would have what seems to be a Latin word. I suppose the missionaries could have inculcated some of the great classic tongue amongst them, but I fancy not. Although I suffer myself from this, particularly when it comes to the introductions on this programme. So whether it's Paddy's lapse lazuli, isn't it? Or portable hurdy-gurdy. Don't like portable hurdy-gurdy because all hurdy-gurdys were portable, therefore that's tautology, so that wouldn't be right. So it must be Paddy's rotten lapse. Now that's a logical, it must be, mustn't it? I mean, that's logical, isn't it? Flash it.
Yeah, you'll have that, will you? Do what he tells you so ungracefully. True or bluff? I wonder who gave the true definition of this word. I really do wonder. 1, 2, 3, go! Yes! Yes, it is a lantum, was or is a hurdy-gurdy. And here we have sembrador, and Robert Powell to define same.
A sembrador was a gentleman brigand in the 14th century, one of a band of disaffected gentry who made nuisances of themselves in the reign of Edward II. In 1317, two such sembradors, Sir Henry... What have I said that's funny?
1317.
So many definitions begin that way.
1317. I'd just like to be precise. In 1317, Sir Henry Twockolo...
Sir Henry who?
You heard the first time.
Not a word. It all splashed.
And his brother Hugh plundered a cardinal on the outskirts of Durham and deprived the said prelate of all his gear. And that is... Sembrador.
Whatever it was, yeah. Well done, lad.
Thank you.
And now, Hilary, your go.
Now you come to the serious member of this panel, you see. A sembrador is a 17th century item of agricultural machinery. And it's horse-drawn, and it can plough, and it can sow seeds, either together or separately. And it's a Spanish invention, and it was brought over and introduced into this country by Lord Sandwich, who was also very fond of sandwiches. But he was a very, very keen gardener. That is the definition of a sandwich.
All right, Frank.
Bit complicated. Best not to write yet. Notes afterwards. I'll leave pause. How can I put it? A sembrador is a box in the shape of a book. Now, a cigar box isn't, because the hinge goes that way, you see. But a sembrador, the hinge is on the left, and it opens like a book. If you've got a sembrador upside down on the desk, it opens on the right, and therefore isn't like a book. But a sembrador, sitting on the desk, opens like a book and is a box, and it's fitted out for botanical specimens.
Yes.
Well, it's a 17th century plough, harrow and sower combined, gentleman's brigand, and a box that looks like a book. So it's Frank Kearton's turn to choose.
Well, I was very impressed by Mr. Robert Powell's description, and I'd been convinced, except, of course, he's got his dates wrong, because Sir Hugh and Sir Henry were 1417 and not 1317. And therefore, I have my doubts about that one. Now, when it comes to Hilary, I didn't know really that Lord Sandwich liked the Spaniards very much. In fact, my best impression was that he was anti-Spaniards, and in fact, the basic reason he invented the sandwich was to get his own back on the matadors of Spain, where he exploits in their balls. But Mr. Muir, of course, has got it absolutely right. He is a well-known collector of botanical specimens, and I've seen myself on his desk, his sembrador.
You choose what Frank said, yes, that well-known botanical specimen, Frank. Open it up, lad.
Your attitude, all I can say is...
Never heard anyone get it wrong more confidently before. Now, who gave the true definition? He's going to do... you see... Sounded like any kind of a bluff on this programme being a 17th century agricultural implement, but it was absolutely true. A sembrador is that. Score stands at 2-1. Ring for another word, and we have loafing. And now it's Lord Kearton's turn.
Well, loafing is an ingenious method of catching pheasant at night with a hand torch and a handbell. Having located your pheasant, you illuminate it with the hand torch, and the operator or loufer then clangs his bell very violently in the pheasant's face, and the poor bemused bird is so stupefied by the light and the din that it's quite easy then to pick it up and put it in your pocket.
John Addams, your go.
Well, it's not pronounced loafing or loafing, it's luffing. And actually, it's a Lenten sowing. And I don't mean that kind of sowing. It's the sowing of a cereal crop between Ash Wednesday and Easter Day. You see, we don't know much about this, but to strict and devout Christians in the Puritan period, in Cromwell's time, the cereal from this sowing, the eating thereof, was considered to be not merely nourishing to the body, but also to the soul.
Patrick.
Loafing, of course, it comes from the German word laufen, which means to run. Loafing formed part of an old Lancashire wedding ceremony. Wait a minute. After the wedding was over,
Cue for song.
all the male guests engaged in a race to the house of the bride, either on foot or on horseback. Like the cute lads went on horseback because the first one to get to the bride's house was entitled to give her a bus. Not the number 11, you fool, but a kiss.
Perilously near a joke there, Patrick, however. Well, anyway, it's a way of capturing very silly pheasants. And it's a spring sowing of cereal, and it's a nuptial race. Robert.
Can't help laughing.
I had this sowing crops between Ash Wednesday, and I'm not too fond of that. I know it's a bit... And you, like me, you laughed. You found it funny, so I don't think it's that. I think it's a bit far to go for a kiss, so I'm not going to accept laughing as being a German running. I also don't think it is. Laufen is to run. And while actually catching a pheasant with a handbell, you're creeping about the forest. You'd hardly wave a handbell about at night. We have the gamekeeper after you. But I like that. I'm going for catching pheasants.
Well, that was Frank Kearton who said it. Now, was he telling the truth? True or bluff? I wonder. Here we go. Bullseye! That really is amazing, isn't it? That's how you catch the pheasants. It's called laughing, and you have a bell and a light. You'd think it'd be easy to say, pheasant, will you be captured? Come in. No, go to all that trouble. 3-1, and we have the word nert. Hilary?
A nert. It's the official mark that you have to put on every swan's beak. And it's a series of little scores on the beak. The only person who, in fact, is not allowed to, who doesn't have to have a nert on the swan's beaks, is Her Majesty the Queen. In fact, they are all nertless.
All right, so, and now it's Frank's go.
Oh, if you have seen recently, or a long time ago, makes no difference, a pewter or copper bowl.
A putrid bowl.
A pewter. Pewter. Or copper bowl, which has lots of little sort of pock marks all over it. That isn't produced by bouncing the thing continuously on the floor. It's actually hammered in. And the chap who hammers it in uses short hammer, heavy top, with a round end, and he dunk, 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 dunk. Ask that man the name of the hammer he is holding in order to plenish pewter or copper, and he will say, "Sir, a nerd." Can I say more?
But why is he doing it at all?
That's a supplementary question. I'm not allowed to answer that. By the rules of the game.
No one's ever seen a pewter tank without those little things on, that's true. Robert Powell, you'll go.
Nert is a verb, to nert, and it means of horned beasts. To push, to prod, to ram, to butt.
Oh, I say, look here.
And I will now proceed to give you a list of such beasts. What can nert? They are bulls, stags, antelopes, unicorns, and in fact it even could give rise to the expression, "By the devil, I have been nerted."
That metal hammer that a centuries-old craftsman uses to do that to pewter, it's a mark on the swan's beak, and it's to butt. Dawn.
Rattle down.
May I confer
By
first?
all means, if you think it would be any use to you. See?
It probably is.
Innocent, look innocent, all.
The nertless Queen's swan doesn't entirely convince me, Hilary. I don't... Oh, she does look innocent, though, doesn't she?
That's normal.
I know, but there's something in her look. The hammer for pewter sounds very logical, Frank, but not very amusing.
Someone will take a hammer to him, I think, and shatter 1,000 fragments.
I'm terribly keen on Robert's prodding and ramming and all those other words we're not allowed to use on television. What? I see.
If we hurry, we might get another
We've
word.
conferred with my captain. Frank's hammer.
Dear Frank, true or bluff?
Oh, he's so pleased. It's a...
Yeah. Who gave the true definition, if you please?
As my captain said...
As one
Oh, not you!
Now then. Nert means to but. We have about no time at all to do the next word. Alcatote dawn. Very swiftly.
Well,
very swiftly.
an alcatote is a little creature. It's a fairy.
Right, stop there. Patrick.
Well, it's a silly or foolish elf.
Yes.
It's a kind of glue that oozes out of Iberian pines.
Splendid news. Thank you.
It's a container or a wrapper for a holy relic.
Good. It's a holy wrapper for a relic, or it's a wrapper for a holy relic, and it's an daft elf resin or glue or that. Hilary?
Oh, Dawn's little creature fairy was lovely, but I don't think it's you. Patrick, the glue, no, that doesn't hold water.
Therefore...
And so it is Lord Kearton.
Yeah, he said that it was, so quick, a holy wrapper.
Container or wrapper for a holy relic.
That's it.
Holy relic.
Very quickly, if you please.
Looking very pleased.
Well done.
So we have the true definition. It's the elf. It's the dear little elf. Dear little elf. Oh, what a hurry we are all in. But I have to declare the winners at 4-2. They is Frank Muir and his company. We shall be presenting you with another selection of Piltdown men from the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Until when, goodbye from Lord Kearton, Robert Powell, Dawn Addams, Hilary Tindall, Patrick Campbell, Frank Muir, and goodbye. It is Call My Bluff, featuring the loveliest legs in the business, Patrick Campbell.
Good evening. My first guest, lovely actress, she's just come back from delighting the President of Austria, but on the stage, of course, playing in Candida, Dawn Addams. And my other guest is a toiler in the difficult field of industry. He's lucky to be alive, Lord Kearton.
And the man who invented the bow tie, Frank Muir.
And my first guest, for those of you without Radio Times, is on loan to us from the brothers, Hilary Tindall. and my second guest is Gustav Holst's, Gustav Mahler's other self, Robert Powell.
Names to conjure with. Now, here we go, and I ring the bell, we get the first word, and it's Hondu, and what happens is that Patrick Campbell and his team define Hondu 3 different ways. They tell a fib in 2 cases, they tell the truth in 1. That's the bit that Frank Muir and his team have got to pick out. So, Patrick,
it's a Hondu.
A Hondu. It brings up images of the wild and woolly West. Wild and woolly old Tom Mix, remember? Wild and woolly old Tom Mix. Even wilder and woollier Zane Grey.
Going back a bit.
Because the Hondu, it's the ring on a lasso. through which the other end goes in order to make a loop. So you can catch things with it. Now, the luxury model of the Hondu, it got leather covering on the loop. That's it's rather swish Hondu. That's what it is.
Yes, that little loop, you say, on the lasso. Frank Kearton, your turn.
Well, Hondu is a species of wild banana, which is native to West Africa and the Azores. And in the freakishly hot summer of 1907, which Frank and I remember so well, an intrepid English lady, Mrs. Susan Henriques, triumphantly grew a bunch of Hondu in her conservatory, which is bent in the Isle of Wight. And it really has gone down in the annals of botany ever since.
Can't be very wild if it took to the Isle of Wight. There you are, Dawn Addams.
The Hondu are a group of ravers. They are screaming human noisemakers. They're to be found in places like Haiti, San Domingo. They kick up one hell of a racket at religious festivals in order to work the population up into a fervour. They make a terrible din, and they frighten away evil spirits.
Right, so they say that it's one of the loops on a lasso. It's a ravening wild banana, and it's a sort of religious, noisy group of persons. Frank?
Yes, right. Patrick, what are you talking about? Lasso. I, like all lads of my age group, worked a lasso, and any self-respecting chap in chaps would drop dead rather than have a ring on his lasso. You have to have a rope loop, not an artificial ring covered with leather.
Thank you.
A palpable lie. May I now, Your Honour, refer to the evidence as put forward by my lord? Mrs. Henriques, flung to the floor in the Isle of Wight by a wild banana. Graphic, but no, sir. It must be, I submit, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it must be that the guilty party is these Hindu football supporters, whatever they are.
Well, it was Dawn Addams who touched on that, there or nearly there, wasn't it, Dawn? Something of the sort, true or Bluff? Ka-chow. Nothing to do with that. I wonder which of the other two it was. Equally unlikely who gave the true one.
Got your loops all back to front.
Oh! It's a little loop on the lasso that you make. Well, it's either made or it's made for you. The sort of slip knot, I think. Stitcherer opens itself to any amount of pronunciations. Frank, Stitcherer?
Stitcherer. Stitcherer. Quaint old Hampshire word, my dears. Oh, yes. A stitcherer is... I won't continue.
No, don't.
Any longer. A stitcherer is one who indulges in stitchering, which is the only way of catching a somnolent eel. Look down your river. There is this eel lurking. Fetch rapidly a scythe. Bind it with sacking so you don't cut the eel, you see. Attach it to a pole or an upended rake. Insert it beneath the sleeping eel and feel your eel. And there you have it, lads. Be stitchering me on.
Hammerset or Mummerset was that? Anyway, it was one or the other. Robert Powell, your...
A stitcherer is a name used in parts of Scotland, a slightly impolite name, to refer to a priest or a minister who is an apprentice, who hasn't quite won the approval of his church or his parishioners. From the pages of Sir Walter Scott's novel The Fortunes of Nigel, I confidently quote, Mr. Milver is away for 6 weeks. We only stick a stitcherer to mind his kirk.
That's an audience that recognises merit when it sees it. Yeah.
What about mine?
Well, yours wasn't bad. I loved it, Frank. I liked it. Tell you about it after.
Well,
Hilary.
I have to tell you that it isn't a quaint old Hampshire word, and it's not your Scottish word either. It's a word from Devon, and it describes the kind of... It describes a tiny little brown apple, and this little brown apple is used for making fine, dry cider. Now, you sometimes see in Devon, you see a large flagon of cider, and it's made from, it says at the bottom, made from the finest stitcherer's apples. A stitcherer is an apple. Unfortunately, it's not very juicy, so that sort of cider is very expensive because you need an awful lot of little brown apples to make a flagon of cider.
How many do you do?
Oh, you are.
Dreadful. When anything's not very funny, do you notice the way people always do accents? However, that's by the way. It's kind of a curate, and it's true, Frank, and you know it. And it's an eel catcher from Mummerset, and it's an apple from Mummerset. And Patrick.
If only yous lot would talk decent, we could all understand what we're talking about. Now, all the apple nonsense, all of about apples. It'd be very, very somnolent eel, wouldn't it? What's it doing while you're binding a sack around it?
It'd be lummocking and slummocking there.
This apprentice with dreadfully incomprehensible English accents. I believe it, against all conceivable probability, to be this laborious method of catching somnolent eels. Put down your glass of water and show your card.
Yes, it was Frank Muir. Frank, own up to a bluff.
Oh, yes, I can see it.
No! Oh, lovely! That's better. That's better.
That's how you catch an eel. But you don't have to speak that way while you're doing it. Now it's 2-0, and we get Lily Low. Rather pleasant. Frank Kearton.
Well, Lily Low is a form of shampooing that's popular with the South Sea Islanders. It's a very energetic head massage, which is done by taking a mixture of very sticky vegetable oils. It's called a paluva, and then you work it in, and finally you're able to set your hair, assuming you have hair, into a very starchy and elaborate hairdo. And that's why Captain Cook was so impressed with the South Sea Islands.
Right. Dawn, your go.
Lily Low is baby talk. It's baby talk for a cosy fire in a nursery fireplace. Now, you know, the doting mothers who use baby talk, they might say something like, "It'll diddums feel the cold den, come and warm ickle toes, by de Lily Low." Fortunately, I had a Scottish nanny who was far too sensible to say anything like that. But that's what it is. It's a nursery fireplace.
That seemed to follow Dawn in some kind of surreal way. It did indeed. Glad she didn't say anything like that. Patrick.
And Lily Low, it's a kind of bait for training eels. Apprentice. Begin again. And Lily Low is a kind of bait for training novice homing pigeons. It seems that novice homing pigeons are kinky about salt. If you place on the novice homing pigeon's dovecot a little ball of grain mixed with salt, once the novice homing pigeon gets its beak into that, it comes back for more and more every single minute of the day. What is the matter with you?
Hence the pigeon, indeed, yes. It's a nursery fire in baby talk. It's a South Sea shampoo, and it's bait for an idiot pigeon.
Good grief. I think... good heavens. Well, cosy fire. If my mother had said to me, come and sit by the lily low, I don't think I'd have ever grown up. Novice homing pigeons, I don't like that. I don't know. Pigeons like millet, they don't like salt. I'm going for the palaver with the paluva. I'm going for the head massage, because I have a feeling that that's in Kearton's not... Yes.
He did say that. It's Lord Kearton's definition. True or bluff? Fiddle-dee-dee. No South Sea shampoo or shampoo of any sort. Who gave the true definition? Eccola. There. A lily low is a nice, kindly way of talking about a nursery fire. Should there be nurseries or fires anymore? Fample is the next word. Robert Powell, you'll go.
Fample, believe it or not, is a verb describing the action that you might see round any afternoon at a nursery tea table. It is, in fact, to shove food into small children's mouths. And this can be done with a spoon or with, in emergencies, the ball, or a shovel. Or the... I will, you keep on interrupting me. The ball of one's thumb, if you like. As it usually happens is after a small child has been fampled, it tends to blow out all over the table that with which it has been fampled.
Hilary, your go.
At the moment, Afro hairstyles are very popular. We've gone through the bouffant, we've gone through the beehive, and in Queen Anne's days, a very, very popular hairstyle was a fample. And a fample, you took a piece of hair from the centre of the crown, you flicked it forward, then you gave it a quick flip back, secured it very sharply with pins over a flat, sort of stiffened bit of something. And it was called a fample. That is a hairstyle.
Oh, yes.
Learn a little something
every day.
A fample, I'll try to make this interesting. A fample is a small patch of leather which is sewn onto a garment to prevent a hole occurring in the garment through wear at the place where the fample is sewn over to prevent it going into a hole. Generally speaking, the fample normally refers to riding gloves, where one single fample is sewn on each finger.
Right, it's a leather patch. It's a way of feeding a child, and it's a kind of hairstyle. So it's Frank Kearton.
Well, on the business of pampering children, as having 8 grandchildren and 9 almost, and having spent years and years and years scooping food into their little mouths, I've never yet heard the word fample. I've heard all sorts of very descriptive words, both from the children and from my wife and sundry relatives, but not fample. So I don't think that one's right. For the patching of gloves or this kind of thing, I've had many gloves patched, being a poor man, but I don't remember anyone ever saying the word fample. On the business of the hairstyle, that seems to me to have the ring of truth, because the verisimilitude with which Hilary described with appropriate gestures how she did it herself seems to me very convincing. So I'll go for Hilary.
Well, she said it was a hairstyle of the reign of Queen Anne. True or bluff, my dear? I think it must have been that terrible fib you told about being a poor man. Who gave the true definition?
Oh, no, it's not. Well, I'm afraid it was me.
It's a way of... You were going to say?
It's a word I shall use from now on.
Yep, it's a way of stuffing food into a child. Yep. 3-1. Well, there's still, as Frank would say, anyone's game, I suppose. Brummer is the next one. Dawn.
Well, Brummer, or Brummer, if you like to call it that way, is made in Birmingham. And it's I don't you see what's so funny about that? It's a very coarse, unsized paper, rather like tough blotting paper. Only the fact is that it's not meant for writing on or for blotting ink. It is meant for bedding. The only advantage is, apart from being cheap and moth-resistant, is that if you want to write little notes while you're in bed, you can write little notes on it. Got it?
And Patrick, your go.
A Brahma is an underwater thief. Or a lot more precisely, perhaps, an underwater line thief. Because a Brahma, because he's now out of business owing to aluminium boats and that kind of thing, but it used to be the lad that would approach a craft beached or in dry dock, after dark, a little hammer and chisel, and bash the copper bottom off of it, and sell it for profit to the arranger who came back the following day, launched his boat and sank immediately.
It's a very good idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lord Kearton, your go.
A Brahma is a winged African insect, which in flight could be mistaken for the British housefly. But unlike the British housefly, it is useful. And it's useful because it lays its eggs in the necks of locusts. And this is regarded as very unfriendly by the locusts because it ultimately leads to their untimely demise.
What about the eggs?
The eggs hatch out and paralyze the locust, and that makes them die.
So it's a paper used for bedding. It's an underwater thief who pinches the bottoms from ships, and it's an insect. Lays its eggs in the necks of locusts. Hilary Tindall.
Well, you see, I go to Birmingham quite often, but I've never seen any sandpaper for bedding in Birmingham. It's very strange to me, but I don't think that's it, Dawn. Lord Kearton, the housefly doesn't really convince me. Patrick, this underwater thief bashing the copper bottoms off boats is so unbelievable that I think I'm going to believe it, and I'm going to say you.
You're going to say
What is that?
you. By you, she
It
means
is going
Patrick
to be-
Campbell himself. Yeah, you gave that definition. True or bluff? You've got it there. You have it there, Hart, I know.
No.
Yes, he's holding up the suspense.
You are in error.
Oh! Because if they did steal it, the ship would sink at once and sort of break their necks, I suppose. But anyway, who gave the true definition of this interesting word? It's the insect which lays its eggs in the neck of the locust. Now we come to CC and Hilary Tindall. Your turn.
A CC is your actual Asiatic sand partridge. It's a tiny, tiny little brown bird. And this is considered by the English gentleman who's out for a weekend shooting as a very unsporting little bird. Because when the beater has flushed the little bird out, instead of taking flight, as any normal bird would, this little fellow just creeps along the ground and just struts around, you see. And obviously he'd be a cad or a bounder if he were going to take a pot shot at it then.
Right, Frank, it's your turn.
CC is the working rig of a Singalese manual labourer. No. You want to hear some more?
Yes, please.
You see, may I struggle on against these odds? It's a rather long length of cotton which starts around the loins and then goes crisscross around the body and is tied behind the neck. It's thus equally suitable for manual labourers or womanual labourers.
Robert Powell.
Forget it.
Yeah. Best.
If you got stuck behind, unlikely as it may seem, a procession of CCs, you might be there for a very long time, because a CC is in fact a litter, which is used by a Maori undertaker. Exactly again. And it is a very ornate, very decorative litter, on which the deceased is borne to the village compound where he lies in state. That's what it is. It is a Maori hearse.
A Maori hearse. is one of the things, and it's an article of Sinhalese clothing worn by chaps who labour, and it's a bird who don't much care to be shot. Dawn Addams, which of those would you have?
No, I don't think it's Hilary's Asiatic bird. And I'm not in... Don't look at me like that, Frank. I'm not entirely convinced by Frank's... what was it? Something wrapped around, yes.
It's a clothing.
Crisscross.
It's a clothing.
And Robert's looking awfully... I think it's Robert's undertaker's hearse.
He did say that, didn't he? Yes. A Maori undertaker's hearse.
A Maori undertaker's hearse.
True or bluff?
Yes,
a bluff.
of course it is all that
Good luck.
facial stuff going on.
Can we see the true definition as swiftly as you please?
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
Yes, it is. Find a partridge which runs away in the undergrowth, and that last word or two words brings us to the end of our game. The score standing... Yes. The score standing at 4-2, I think, in favour of Patrick Campbell, yes. Patrick Campbell's team has won. So, we shall have another little dig in the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Until then, goodbye from Frank Kearton, Robert Powell, Dawn Addams, Hilary Tindall, Patrick Campbell.
Good night.
Frank Muir.
Good night.
And goodbye.
Well done to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
This is Call My Bluff, where the man who converts his pyjamas into bow ties is invariably Frank Muir.
Good evening. Neither of my two guests have played this game before, which is rather nice. My first has two jobs. She's wife to Lord Harlech, and she's also cookery editor of Vogue. Pamela Harlech. As a nation, we're supposed to enjoy messing about in boats, and my next guest messes about on rather a grander scale and to greater success than most of us. In fact, he messed around in a boat, the first man to mess around in a boat, non-stop, single-handed, all the way around the world, Robin Knox-Johnston.
Now we have the old wooden halfpenny himself, Patrick Campbell.
Good evening. And my first guest is a most distinguished Shakespearean actress, now playing in Measure for Measure with the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford-on-Avon. But she's also a dear little thing called Francesca Anise. And my other guest is also a Shakespearean actor. But thank heavens he's only Michael Jayston.
Let's see if the old magic works. Yes, it does, and it brings down the first word. And as you know, man and boy, Gingawdry is going to be defined three different ways by Frank Muir and his team. Two of the definitions are going to be cod or false. One of them is going to be true. That's the one that Patrick and company are going to try and pick out. So what about this word, Frank?
Well, this piece of frozen cod is a Manx word. No? Well, no, it is. It's a Manx word. It means a blind alley. And If you're in the Isle of Man and you go up a passage and you can't get out at the other end, you're in a gingauderie. It also means, actually, an adjective. You could use it as an adjective to say that you're, as you are, nonplussed or baffled.
Waitley hears the others, beginning now with Robin Knox-Johnston, yes?
Well, a gingauderie is an old Welsh word and is used to describe the old Welsh social unit, which had its rights and privileges described under bardic law. Gingauderie consisted of 4 generations, and it gave the great-grandfather, the head of the gingauderie, considerable proprietary rights over the rest of the family.
What, like selling them if he chose into slavery or that? Anyway, now it's Pamela Harlech's go.
Well, gyngaudry is a fish pâté, which was served as a starter as long ago as 1400 A.D. Gyngaudry is prepared from the livers of various fish like hake or haddock or codling, and the livers are parboiled before they are mashed with various herbs into a thick paste.
Sounds delicious. It's a dead end in the Isle of Man. It's a fish pâté, and it's a Welsh family with very peculiar rules. Patrick?
Well, goodness me. Baffled in a blind alley in the Isle of Man. Well, not even the Isle of Man could produce a word like that. But I think the Welsh could. These social... Well, kind of paterfamilias, that kind of arrangement.
Don't answer extra questions unless you feel... unless we're 4-1, which we will be.
May I continue with my speculation?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sallis.
I don't believe anything to do with whales at all. I think it's got something to do with awful boiled fish livers in the 14th century.
You don't use the word, I know, but you are plumping for that, aren't you? Yes, you flinched. But it was Pamela Harlech who said that. Was that true, or was it a bluff? It's that delicious refection of fish so described. And now we have another word, trobellion. Patrick Campbell's go.
Trobellion is a tiny little cactus-like plant that grows in the rocks and cliffs of Cornwall. Its scientific name is Pilatus sempervivum. It's also known by a whole shower of pet names, each one of them more revolting than the other, because it can be called prick finger, or humstickle, or even willy pillipins.
Well, it's Michael Jayston's turn.
A trobellion was an ancient Greek optical device for magnifying a source of light through water. In fact, a trobellion is a glass globe filled with water. And for instance, in a very dimly lit room, you could put this trobellion anywhere you liked and direct a shaft of light anywhere you chose.
Yep. Okay, well now, Francesca Annis, what do you say?
A trobellion is a whirling wind that comes whirling out of a clear blue sky. And an ancient account of a garden party attended by King Arthur contains the following quote. Merlin, by craft, made such a trobellion arise that there was left nothing but tent nor pavilion standing.
Well, that's fairly complete. There you have it. It's an optical device. It's a plant sometimes known as willy pilly pins, according to Patrick, which probably be the next word down to define. Or it's a whirling sort of wind. Frank?
No problem here at all. Crystal clear. 2 pathetic attempts to make capital out of the Cornish-sounding trobellion name. First of all, the willy pilly pin.
That's what it's called, familiarly.
That's what you were called.
Never.
I don't think it's a whirly wind. I think it's this improbable word for an ancient glass globe filled with water, but I'm sure that's what it is.
You're going to choose that.
Will you put me out?
Michael Jayston, yes, true or bluff? So it wasn't the optical device. Now, which of the other two might it be, truthfully speaking?
Not willy-pilly pins, it can't. Oh, thank heavens.
It's the whirling. Not willy-pilly pins with which Patrick holds his trousers up, I suspect, but the whirling wind. Storpings, stopings, I don't know. Robin Knox-Johnston, how do you pronounce it?
Storpings. Well, Storpings was, until 1945, the Admiralty decreed that any sailor under punishment should tease out 4 pounds of oakum every day. And this is a tedious chore because it means you've got to take a rope, a tarred rope, and pull it into little pieces. You make a big ball of oakum. And Storpings is the lower deck slang word for oakum that has been so laboriously teased out. It's a lower deck slang word for oakum.
Right. Now it's Pamela Harlech to go.
Stopings. Stopings are pieces of surplus fat which are trimmed off the carcass of an animal or of a joint of meat, and they're put into a pan and they're rendered into lard. Now, the best and purest of these stopings are found in the fat surrounding sheep's kidneys. And these are rendered down, and they're set so beautifully that the lard is virtually transparent.
Well, that's a mercy. Frank Muir.
Stoppings, or stoppings, or staubings, is a collective noun, or noun of assembly, for the potholes stamped into muddy roads by cattle or horses. Now, strictly speaking, you could have a stomping, but this would mean that the horse or the cow was either limping so badly that it's hopping along on one leg, or that it was walking extremely carefully so that all the hooves went into the one hole. So generally speaking, in most parts of the country you'll find that it is used in the plural. Storpings.
Right. Storpings are little bits of oakum, or transparent pieces of fat, or they are a collective noun for potholes made in the style described by Frank. Michael Jayston.
Yes, well, Frank Muir was so convoluted.
He always is. There's nothing new there.
None of us getting any
That could be the one, but I tend to say no because he did elaborate a bit. So I'm left with oakum and this fat on the carcass of a sheep. I think I wouldn't say it was oakum. I'll go for the fat. Kidneys.
Well, Pamela Harlech said that it was the rendered down fat of sheep in this condition. True or bluff, was it now?
Yeah.
Nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that at all. Must be one of the others. I wonder which it is. Who gave the true definition? Quite right. Storpings, staupings, or pronounce it as you will, is or are the holes made by cows and so forth marching along. We have unch, Michael Jayston.
An unch is a raised platform in Malaya on which the natives put their produce or goods for either sale or barter. And often, round this unch is put a fence of either wood or netting to discourage thieves, so that from a distance it could look like a rather primitive boxing ring. Unch.
Right, now, Francesca, it's your turn.
Well, unch is, of course, short for a short lunch. Now, to be more precise, unch is a snack that's taken, in between, periods of work while people are haymaking or beetroot mulching or something like that, and, some sort of agricultural work, and more often than not, it's made up of, cheese and biscuits. Unch, a short lunch.
Yeah, well, exactly the word suggested. Patrick?
Unch, Red Indian word, and it's the Red Indian word, unch, it's like Powell. Unch is a beaver-like a dam made not by beavers, but by Red Indians. And the real experts in this field are the Blackfeet. And the Blackfeet want to catch some fish, no messing around with nets or hooks. So they build this beaver-like dam into a kind of V shape with logs.
With their feet. Hence the name.
Unch is a beaver-like dam. After they've built it, not cemented, but with mud. All the logs together, they drive the fish into it, and just pick them out by hand. Say, there's your unch out of the unch.
You wouldn't make a bad Red Indian yourself, Patrick. That South Seas tan you've got. Anyway, it's a platform whence you sell things. It's a kind of a little snack or bite, and it's a Red Indian type dam. Robin Knox-Johnston.
Yes. Well, I've heard of brunch, but not of unch. So I think we'll risk ignoring a snack. Raised platform in a Malayan market. It could be, but it sounds a bit rough for the Malays. I think we'll go for a Red Indian dam.
The Red Indian dam, which Patrick spoke so convincingly. True or bluff?
Oh.
No, it wasn't that. Who gave the true definition of this word, unch? It is indeed. Unch is a little snack, 11s is that kind of thing. And now we have gledge, and it's Pamela Harlech's turn.
Well, gledge. Gledge is a sidelong look. It's a covert glance from the corner of the eye, as women are wont to bestow on men when they are feeling coquettish, and men when they're feeling furtive.
It's quite different. Yeah.
Gledge is also a verb, meaning to project such a glance in such a fashion.
Splendid. Frank, stop sucking that pen.
I'm sucking the right end this time. Gledge, homemade glue.
That's all?
Yes, you could make it by getting an elderly cart horse and backing it into a pot of boiling water, I suppose. or you could boil down old neck curtains and mix them with white of egg. Or you could just mix up flour and water, as one used to do in making paper chains for Christmas. Whatever happened
Tell
to
us
making
more, Frank,
paper
about
chains
that.
for Christmas? Used to cut the little strips and fold them round and use flour and water and hold them and they stick. Homemade, any sort of homemade glue.
Right. Robin Knox-Johnston.
Well, a gledge is a sort of non-spade-shaped spade, which is used for digging up turnips or mangel-wurzels. Came in before modern agricultural machinery came along. It's particularly found in Norfolk, and it's a tapered curve.
He spots them.
It's a tapered spade, and it's curved so that you can get down and under and up, as it were, haul out the vegetables.
Right. It's a turnip spade, much used in Norfolk. And it's a sly look, coquettish for the one sex or furtive for the other, and it's homemade glue. Francesca, what do you say?
Well, I don't know. A coquettish look. I think I most probably would have heard about that.
You would have.
Gledge. Yes, I think so. On the other hand, a non-spade-shaped spade. I don't think I would have heard about that, except that I might have heard about that at school.
In Norfolk?
Yes, in Norfolk. And on the other hand, glue, homemade glue, melting down net curtains. I'm sure I would have heard about that in my youth. Which I never did. Or a cart horse backed onto boiling water. Good God. I really don't know. No, I don't think it can be a coquettish look. And I don't think it's a Norfolk-produced spade. I'll try Frank Muir
and his
homemade
wretched glue. Yes, Frank. Were you having us on with all that autobiography?
Extraordinary thing to
Not the glue, not that. What was the true definition? Here it comes. Must be there.
Spade.
Not a sidelong coquettish.
Oh, yes. Really, it's perfectly unbelievable that such a look could be called a gledge. But it is. 3-2, very close. Iapetus. Francesca Annis.
Now, an iapetus. Iapetus is a clicking or a cracking noise when a joint in the human frame gets put out of place. You know, like when you twist your ankle or you put your back out or something like that. And the sound of the iapetus is usually accompanied by another noise, usually a human noise, that comes out of the throat like, ah! Or help! That's an iapetus.
Yep, seems very reasonable. Patrick Campbell.
The Iapetus was an enormous book of reference for the benefit of German lawyers during the reign of Charlemagne, Emperor of the Frankish Empire. It was round about the size of the first quarter of the London Telephone Book, but it was written in Latin. And it set out the multitudinous laws what was imposed by the Frankish Emperor on the subject nations of places like Gaul and Italy and Spain.
Wales.
Certainly. Yes. Food for thought there, Patrick. Michael, your turn.
Iapetus is an astronomer's word, and it's the name given to the 8th satellite of the planet Saturn. This was discovered by a gentleman called Cassini in 1671. And it has a rather odd characteristic in that it shines brightest on the westward side of the parent planet. I could go on about this all night, but one more fascinating characteristic is that Iapetus has an eccentricity of 0.0284.
Your boss has got more than that.
Well, it's a legal reference book of enormous size. It's the sound of a bone cracking, and it's Saturn's 8th satellite. Pamela Harlech.
They're all amazing, that's all I can say. I don't know, that clicking and cracking noise. It could be, but I don't believe it. I'm worried about that satellite and its eccentricities. I'll go for the Latin book of reference.
That was Patrick who told you all that. Was it all gubbins, he said, or was it the truth? True or bluff?
Absolute dribbling nonsense.
May we quickly know who gave us the true definition, and then we can go and have another word, who knows? Here it comes. Yes, indeed. Saturn's 8th satellite. Yes, not the 7th, not the 9th, but the 8th. 4-2, and we have Wrangle. Frank.
Wrangle? Oh, yes, lovely word. It's was an annual festival in Worcestershire, where all the lads lined up on one side of the bank of the River Stour, and all the lads who didn't like those lads lined up on the other side of the River Stour. And nowadays it's sort of bingo.
Right. Robin, your go. Fairly swiftly if we're to get it in.
Well, wrangle is an old word for a rib, not an anatomical rig, a nautical rib, and in fact it's the rib of a boat.
Pamela, your turn.
Well, wrangle is a rather nasty device used by gamekeepers to make life difficult for animals by placing a stone which obstructs getting in or getting out of their lair.
Well, it's something then that stops up sort of a lair, burrow, that kind of thing. Sort of a festival, according to Frank, and the rib of a boat. Patrick.
As a fully paid-up member of the Irish Navy, now retired, we never had any wrangles in that lot.
Wrangles?
But on the other hand, it's about time we got a little bit of boating stuff in, isn't it? Well, it certainly isn't a romp by the banks of the Stour. Anything that happens in this programme always happens in Norfolk. About 1884, so it can't be that. It can't be the... I couldn't really follow Lady Harlech.
It was a nice stone placed where the little rabbit or...
Yeah, I thought you said that, but it isn't that at all.
Ah.
It's the rib of a boat.
Rib of a boat, you say that was Robin Knox-Johnston, true or bluff?
Can't change his mind now.
He ought to know, oughtn't he? May I ask you, did you know that was... had you heard the word before?
No, I hadn't.
Oh.
I've never heard it before.
Well, there you are. The score standing now at 5-2. I declare that Patrick Campbell and his team has won.
Well done,
We shall be taking our killing bottle into the linguistic savannah next week. I make no doubt of that. Until then, goodbye from Robin Knox-Johnston, Michael Jayston, Pamela Harlech, Francesca Annis, Francesca Muir, Patrick Campbell.
Good night.
And goodbye. We'll forgive him. Yes, it is Call My Bluff, where the art of fiction is still kept alive by Patrick Campbell.
Thank you. Good evening. And my first guest, while busy churning away in Measure for Measure at the Royal Shakespeare Company, Stratford and Avon, has also had time to do a play of the month, Chekhov's The Wood Demon, and she's a little bit of a demon too, Francesca Annis. And my other assistant played the part of the Tsar in that second motion picture, Nicholas and Alexandra. He's now doing rather better for the National Theatre, Mr. Michael Jayston.
And the man in the asbestos bow tie, Frank Muir.
My first guest is cookery expert, Queen of the Pots, Lady Harlech.